Hey friends, it's Trailblazer. Excited to wrap about BattleTech with you as always. So I've been playing more games balanced by battle value lately, and I've been thinking hard about which mechs are good to take, and it seems like viewers really like videos where I recommend mechs. So I thought today I would recommend 5 mechs that I think are a really good deal for the battle value and that cost under 1,000 battle value. Sometimes when you're putting together a force, you just start running out of points, and it can be really useful to just have a couple of go-to units that are really cheap, that don't cost very much BV, that you can slot in if necessary to complement your more expensive units. Now, a lot of the time I like to use vehicles for this purpose, but sometimes people don't like to play with vehicles, and so it's good to have a few mechs that are cheap that you can also use as your go-to cheap units. Now the first one I wanted to show you is the Spider 5D, which is the Introtech Davian Spider. This one carries a flamer instead of one of the medium lasers, which reduces the battle value cost by quite a bit. And it doesn't really decrease the usefulness of the mech that much, because what you want to do with a spider, right, is you want to just jump basically adjacent to enemies and then kick them, as well as, shooting your little piddly weapons. So having a flamer instead of a medium laser, it's just a difference of 2 damage. It's not really that much difference to the effectiveness of the spider. So this 5D is a real bargain. The only problem is if you're playing with the availability rules, it's only available to the Federated Suns. But it's a really nice mech. It's a great deal for the points. It becomes a lot less useful in later eras after pulse lasers show up, but still, Jump 8 is a really nice thing to have even in later eras. Now, in a lot of tournament games, there's going to be limitations on how many units you can take at Jump 7 or higher. So that's going to mean if you're playing a game like that, you're not going to want to use up your Jump 7 unit on that cheap spider. You're probably going to want to take something like a Wraith that jumps 7 to have a real impact from your Jump 7 mech. So Jump 6 mechs in a thing like that become really useful. Also, Jump 6 mechs are usually pretty cheap for battle value because they don't get the battle value defensive bonus from having Jump 7. So there's a number of Jump 6 mechs that are a really nice deal for the battle value. And the one I wanted to highlight is the Firestarter 9M, the Mirage. This is a really, really nice mech. With Jump 6, you can usually get right up next to your opponent. Again, you're going to want to do that kind of kicking strategy with these kind of mechs. Maybe you jump into the rear arc and you kick them and you fire your weapons. And this mech has just a really large arsenal of lasers and machine guns, so it just fires a whole bunch of little hits into the enemy. You're kind of likely to hit with something because you're shooting so many weapons. So it's just a really nice maneuverable mech. And take a look at that armor. Right, you're paying not even quite 800 battle value, and you get maximum armor on a 35-ton mech. It's moving pretty fast. It hits with a fair bit of damage if you hit with everything, and if you're shooting at a hard target, you're likely to hit with something because you're firing so many weapons. This is a dang good mech for how much you pay for it. I think it's an incredible deal. Now, to change the timetable a little bit and look at something a little more high-tech, take a look at this Whitworth WTH-3 from the 3069 era. So this mech has a really narrow role, but it's a useful role, and I think it's going to be really, serve you well on the battlefield if you want to have a unit that fills that role. Now, I've never liked the look of the Whitworth, especially. I think it looks like kind of like just a junky trash can mech, just kind of like a trash can bot, like Vincent from The Black Hole, if you've ever seen that movie. But anyway, it's too bad because a lot of the Whitworths work pretty well. They're kind of like a mini catapult, and that's what this one really shines at doing, because with improved jump jets, it gets to jump 6. So this mech can fulfill a really cool role where you send it kind of behind the enemy line, right? You flank them, you send this Whitworth, you jump it behind a hill, ideally behind where the enemy mechs are, and then you rain down indirect fire from those 4 LRM-5s. And for LRM-5s, it's a really useful way to set up the LRMs because, again, you're getting a lot of shots, so you're likely to hit with something, even if the target numbers are not very good. Also, it's got a lot of ammo. That can be annoying because obviously it might explode, but with LRM-5s, actually a lot of different ammo slots is really useful because you can give it, for example, a ton of thunder ammo so that it can set up minefields. If you're allowing smoke, which it affects the game hugely, you can give it a ton of smoke ammunition, and then it just is a game changer, allowing you to obscure your units from enemy line of sight. And if you're facing infantry, for example, you could give it a ton of the anti-infantry ammunition, and then it's just going to massacre infantry at long range. So this is a really nice utility mech, and it's really good for flanking your opponents and then hitting them from behind with indirect fire. It has a couple of really cool roles for it. It's not going to do everything, but the things that it does really well, and it is cheap. Now, another mech I never liked as a kid was the Owens. I think it looks fine, but the Owens, it made me mad when I opened up Tech Readout 3058 because I was like, oh, Inner Sphere Omni, it's 35 tons and it goes 812. That's pretty good speed. It's got great armor. I'm liking it, right? These are the kind of things I like. And then it's like, oh, it's got single heat sinks. So you can't put like a big arsenal of cool weapons on it. Okay, so I got really mad at this mech. That said, for the battle value, a couple of the variants of the Owens are extremely good. And if you look at this Owens A, you know, it's a really useful mech, right? It is another mech that you're going to want to run right up against the opponent, not jump in this case, but run right up to them and kick them and shoot them with a bunch of little weapons. And so it's hitting with 5 different weapons. It's got 2 Streak 2s, a couple machine guns, and a small pulse. And, you know, so it's good at killing infantry up close with those machine guns and the small pulse. But also those weapons are really not bad against mechs in this Owens because what you're going to want to do is just run right up to the enemy anyway. So it's a nice kind of kicker. You know, you just run up, you kick the enemy, you shoot them with all these piddly little weapons. And also it carries a tag, which is very useful for spotting for LRMs, for semi-guided LRMs. And if you're playing with Arrow 4, you know, it's really dangerous, right? Arrow 4 with tag is super dangerous. But the main thing I really like about this mech is it's affordable for the battle value. It's 720 BV, which is not much. And like that Firestarter, it carries a lot of armor. Those legs, for example, can take a 15-point hit. So this, for a light mech, this is a hardy mech. I like it a lot. Number 5 on my list is a mech that I've talked about a little bit before and that I just adore, which is the Hollander G1, the variant of the Hollander that carries an LB-10X autocannon. Now, as people who play a lot of combined arms know, the LB-10X is just such a useful weapon. It is murder against armored vehicles. It's absolutely murder against VTOLs, you know, helicopters, and against aerospace fighters. It's a really great anti-air weapon. And it's also really good as a crit-seeking weapon against mechs. So, you know, it's really nice to have a cheap platform for the LB-10X. This mech costs 873 battle value, so it's actually really cheap even compared with the armored vehicles that carry an LB-10X. And it holds up pretty well. It's got decent, solid armor. Not quite as good as the other 2 35-tonners I've talked about, but good enough to survive against a lot of different weapons. And that LB-10X with 2 medium lasers to back it up, you know, it really hits hard, right? So this is a mech that brings a really useful arsenal to the table. It's going to stand up somewhat against fire, and you don't pay very much to bring that LB-10X to the battlefield. A lot of games you want to have an LB-10X as a utility weapon, and this is one of the cheapest ways to do it. And finally, just one honorable mention. I don't play clans a lot. I don't play as the clans a lot. I play against the clans a lot. But I would be remiss if I did not mention the Dasher or Moth H variant, which, you know, it's got terrible armor obviously, but it goes super fast and it hits like a ton of bricks, right? It's got all those heavy small lasers and a targeting computer. You know, this thing can run up to an enemy and just melt that enemy. So this is a mech I know that sees a lot of play in BattleTech tournaments, and rightly so, because it's a monster. You know, once you hit it, it's dead, but it's not easy to get that hit in, and if it comes next to you, it can kill you, almost like no matter who you are. So, I mean, in a way, this is more than an honorable mention, because for the battle value, this is just one of the best mechs in the game. But I make it an honorable mention, like I said, because I don't play clans very much.